The psychology of aging. Embracing life after 60. Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you a question. How often do we assume that the things we take for granted today will make sense tomorrow? How often do we act as though the rules we play by in our youth will serve us just as well in old age? Well, let me tell you something. When you hit 60, a lot of what you once thought was solid ground starts to feel like shifting sand beneath your feet. When you're young, time feels endless. You make plans for someday, believing there will always be another opportunity, another chance to do the things you keep putting off. You convince yourself that if you waste a day, a week, or even a year, it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. But after 60, the illusion shatters. You wake up one day and realize you have far fewer days ahead than behind. And suddenly, every moment matters in a way it never did before. At this stage in life, you begin to grasp the true weight of time. It's not just an abstract concept anymore, it's a finite currency. You start to see that every decision you made in the past led you to where you are now. And every choice from this point forward is an investment with diminishing returns. The hours you spend on meaningless distractions, the years you wasted holding on to anger, the moments you let slip by without truly living, they all become painfully clear. You realize that procrastination was never harmless, it was always a slow erosion of your own potential. And now, every second must count because there are no refunds, no do-overs, and no guarantees. The illusion of invincibility. When you're young, so much of your energy is spent trying to impress others. You shape your identity around what people think of you, peers, colleagues, strangers on the internet. You chase achievements, status, and recognition, believing that if you just reach a certain level of success, admiration will bring fulfillment. But after 60, something shifts. You begin to realize that most people were never really paying attention in the first place. They were too preoccupied with their own insecurities, their own struggles, their own need for validation. At this stage in life, the desire to impress starts to feel empty. You see the absurdity of seeking approval from people whose opinions are fleeting at best. You recognize how much unnecessary stress you put on yourself trying to live up to expectations that were never truly defined. The truth is, most of the people you worried about impressing won't be there in the long run. What truly matters is not the applause of the crowd but the respect you have for yourself. The moment you stop seeking validation from others is the moment you free yourself to live authentically, without fear, without pretense, and without the exhausting need to prove your worth. The body. A temple or a battlefield. In youth, the body seems invincible. You can eat poorly, sleep too little, push yourself to exhaustion, and still wake up the next day with energy to spare. Small aches are ignored, bad habits are justified, and there's always this underlying assumption that there's time to fix everything later. But after 60, the consequences of years of neglect become undeniable. The body doesn't bounce back the way it once did. Every unhealthy choice accumulates, and the debts of the past must finally be paid. What once seemed like minor discomforts can turn into chronic pain, and the activities that once felt effortless now demand caution. The realization sets in that health is not something you can take for granted, it's something that must be actively maintained. Medicine can help, but it can't undo decades of mistreatment. Mobility, strength, and vitality become privileges, not guarantees. At this stage, every choice regarding food, movement, and rest takes on a new weight because the cost of ignoring them is no longer just discomfort, it's a loss of independence, freedom, and ultimately, time. The truth becomes undeniable. Nothing you've achieved in life will matter if your body is too weak to let you enjoy it. The weight of resentment. Holding on to resentment can feel justified when you're younger. Someone wrongs you, and you replay the moment over and over, feeding the anger, convincing yourself that justice, whether through confrontation or quiet bitterness, will somehow make things right. But after 60, you begin to see the real cost of carrying grudges. You realize that the person who hurt you has likely moved on, forgotten, or never even understood the depth of your pain. Meanwhile, you've spent years allowing that wound to take up space in your mind, draining your energy and peace. The truth is, resentment serves no productive purpose. It doesn't undo the past, it doesn't change the person who wronged you. It only traps you in a cycle of negativity that steals from your present. As time becomes more precious, you start to see that forgiveness isn't about excusing bad behavior. It's about refusing to let that behavior define your life any longer. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting, nor does it mean reconciling with people who continue to harm you. It simply means choosing to prioritize your own well-being over the illusion of justice. Because in the end, the weight of bitterness is far heavier than the act of moving on. The illusion of possessions. In youth, there's an almost instinctive drive to accumulate bigger houses, newer cars, more clothes, more possessions. The belief is that success is measured in things. That having more will bring security, admiration, and a sense of accomplishment. But after 60, that illusion begins to fade. You start to see that every item you own is not just an object but a responsibility. It must be maintained, stored, organized, and eventually left behind. What once felt like achievement now feels like clutter. At this stage, you begin to question what truly adds value to your life. You realize that experiences, relationships, and health matter far more than an overflowing garage or a house filled with things you rarely use. There's a certain liberation in letting go, donating what you don't need, simplifying your surroundings, and focusing only on what truly brings you joy or utility. The more you strip away the unnecessary, the clearer life becomes. The weight of excess is replaced by the freedom of simplicity. And as the years become more precious, you no longer measure success by what you own but by how lightly you can walk through life without being burdened by what no longer serves you. The power of small habits. People tend to think that major life changes happen through big, dramatic decisions. They believe transformation comes from a sudden burst of motivation, a grand resolution, or a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. But after 60, it becomes painfully clear that life is not shaped by a few major events. It's built on thousands of small daily habits. Every choice, no matter how insignificant it seemed at the time, has led to where you are now. The state of your body, your mind, your relationships, and even your financial situation is largely the result of repeated behaviors over decades. If you neglected your health, it wasn't because of one bad meal or one skipped workout, it was the accumulation of years of poor choices. If your relationships have faded, it wasn't one argument that caused it but the slow erosion of neglect. And the same is true for success, happiness, and fulfillment. Small, consistent habits, whether positive or negative, compound over time. The realization can be sobering, even frightening, but it's also empowering. Because while you can't rewrite the past, you can change what happens next. Every small, intentional action today is an investment in the future, whether you have 5 years left or 50. The futility of arguments. When you're young, arguments feel like battles that must be won. There's a deep need to prove yourself right, to correct others, to defend your perspective at all costs. You believe that if you just find the right words, the right evidence, or the right tone, you can change someone's mind. But after 60, you begin to see the futility in most of these debates. People don't change their beliefs because of a well-crafted argument. They change when they are ready, and often only through their own experiences. With time, you realize that much of what you once fought over was meaningless. Winning an argument rarely improves your life, and often, it only drains your energy. The need to be right gives way to the desire for peace. That doesn't mean truth doesn't matter, it does. But engaging in endless conflict, especially with those who are more interested in arguing than understanding, becomes exhausting and unnecessary. You start to choose your battles more wisely. You learn when to speak and when to walk away. And most importantly, you realize that proving a point is far less valuable than preserving your time, your relationships, and your inner peace. Bridging the generational gap. As people grow older, there's a temptation to withdraw from the younger generation. It's easy to dismiss their values, their technology, their way of thinking as misguided or inferior. There's a sense of frustration. Why don't they see the world the way you do? Why don't they listen to wisdom gained through decades of experience? But after 60, it becomes clear that disengaging is not the answer. The world will continue evolving with or without your approval. And the question is whether you will be a part of that process or stand on the sidelines, complaining about how things used to be. Younger generations may not always ask for guidance, but that doesn't mean they don't need it. And just as they have much to learn, so do you. The worst mistake an older person can make is assuming they have nothing left to gain from new perspectives. Wisdom is not just about passing down knowledge, it's about staying open to growth. No matter your age, bridging the gap between generations isn't about proving who is right or wrong, it's about sharing, learning, and remaining engaged in the world instead of retreating into irrelevance. Connection, not isolation, is what gives life meaning. Embracing mortality. For most of life, death feels like an abstract idea, something distant, something that happens to other people. It's easy to push it aside, to avoid thinking about it, to live as though time is unlimited. But after 60, the reality of mortality becomes undeniable. Friends pass away, family members grow older, and suddenly, you can no longer pretend that you have all the time in the world. This realization can be frightening, but it can also be liberating. When you fully accept that life is finite, your priorities shift. You stop wasting time on petty conflicts, on meaningless distractions, on chasing things that don't truly matter. You begin to appreciate every moment, every relationship, every experience in a way you never did before. The small things, a quiet morning, a heartfelt conversation, a simple act of kindness, take on new significance. Instead of fearing death, you start to focus on truly living. You recognize that what you leave behind isn't money or possessions but the impact you had on the people around you. Avoiding thoughts of mortality doesn't make life longer, it only makes it less meaningful. Embracing it, however, allows you to make the most of the time you have left. Aging is not just a biological process, it's a psychological journey. It's a time when the illusions of youth begin to fade, and the truths of life become clearer. It's a time to let go of what no longer serves you and to embrace what truly matters. It's a time to reflect on the past, to learn from it, and to use that wisdom to shape the future. As a psychologist with decades of experience, I can tell you that the key to aging well is not just about maintaining physical health. It's about cultivating mental and emotional resilience. It's about learning to let go of the need for external validation, to forgive those who have wronged you, to simplify your life, and to focus on what truly brings you joy and fulfillment. The journey of aging is not always easy, but it is rich with opportunities for growth and transformation. It's a time to embrace the wisdom that comes with experience, to connect with others in meaningful ways, and to live each day with intention and gratitude. So, as you navigate this stage of life, remember that every moment is a gift. Use it wisely, cherish it deeply, and live it fully, because in the end, the true measure of a life well lived is not in the years we accumulate but in the moments we truly live.